Welcome to Becoming Spiritual, a podcast about the magic that surrounds us and has always been a part of us. I'm your host, Heather Dolan, a passionate seeker dedicated to bringing together beautiful humans who are doing amazing things in this world. Together, we will explore healing modalities and practical spiritual practices that can enrich your everyday life. We will also hear stories of awakenings, many from people in the corporate world who have broken out of the spiritual closet. Wherever you are in your journey, know you have found a community of open-hearted individuals committed to making themselves and our world a better place. Welcome home. Hello, and welcome back to Becoming Spiritual. Today, Natalie and I had the pleasure of sitting down with my friend, Willow Shire. And Willow is really special. This was one of the first episodes we recorded for the podcast, but realized quickly that our conversation went pretty deep into some more advanced spiritual topics. And we wanted to make sure that we had rolled out some other episodes that felt a little bit easier to grasp at the beginning of the podcast. But now that we're a dozen episodes in, we felt like this is the right time to bring Willow's episode to you. So I have had the pleasure of working with Willow. I've been a client. We actually hosted an event together a little over a year ago that was so magical. It brought me to someone who is a good friend of mine now and Reiki teacher, and it brought us together. It allowed me to see him in action and experience his energy and his work in the flesh, which was really cool because a lot of us only see or work with teachers who are online. So that was a really beautiful experience. And I just think really highly of Willow. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of him, which please don't be intimidated when you hear some of the words in his bio, because we're going to dive into this conversation, like I said, with some deep topics, but we are going to break them down. So hopefully they don't feel too far out of reach or something that you can't understand. So just bear with us, and I promise it'll be a worthwhile episode for you to listen to. So Willow is a spiritual artist, author, and galactic ambassador known for his unique ability to connect with multidimensional beings through spirit art and storytelling. From childhood, Willow experienced deep connections with faeries, dragons, Sasquatch, and galactic beings, connections that would shape his life's work. Through his books, artwork, and workshops, he helps others connect with their divine teams, release fear, and reclaim their sovereignty. Willow's mission is to help others awaken to their authenticity and sovereignty to move them to a higher timeline of heaven on earth. So, what does all that mean? You'll find out when you listen, but we explored a lot of topics. And just something fun to mention is when we talked about doing an episode together, of course, we knew we would be divinely guided, but we thought about talking about fairies, because who doesn't love fairies? Feels fun and magical and light. And of course, Spirit, the divine, had other plans. And really, we talked a lot about fear and how you can heal through shadow work, which we'll talk about what that is, and healing ancestral trauma. We talk about spirit realms and being aware of all of the dimensions that exist out there outside of just this moment in time in our place on earth. We will talk a lot about spiritual sovereignty and protection. So what does that mean to be sovereign? It's a really important concept and something to practice or learn more about so you can be aware. So we're going to talk about a lot. It was a long conversation, and I'm excited for you to hear more about Willow. And I highly encourage all of you to go to his website and also to check him out on the social channels, Instagram, YouTube. He provides probably the most free content of anyone I know out there. He does lives weekly, sometimes multiple times a week, where he will take your questions and answer them live. He won't do readings live for free, but he will do a lot of Q&A and talk on things and give guidance and insight. And it's awesome. He does do readings. That's one of the only things he charges for. He has a ton of books and content that he shares for free. His spirit art is beautiful. I've done multiple readings with him, and all of his spirit art is incredibly activating. It's something you can meditate on, can help you heal just by looking at it and being in its presence. It's really powerful. And so I, again, encourage you to just check out his content. And if you feel called and resonate with him, to schedule time to meet him or have a reading or buy a piece of his spirit art. He's really putting so much out into the collective for free. There's not a lot that he charges for. And so I just really want to support him in his mission to bring awareness and light and so much good energy out to the world and help him on that mission. So without further ado, we're going to jump into the conversation. I hope you love this episode and all the magic, and leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought. Thanks so much. Here we go. All right. Welcome, Willow.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
We are really excited. And Hi, Natalie.
Hey, Heather. And hi, Willow. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you.
So happy you could wake up really early for us because he's 2 hours behind from a time zone perspective. But we have Natalie, who's across the world in Australia. So we're truly having a global conversation this morning, which is the magic of these platforms. Mm-hmm. So speaking of, I want to just share how Willow and I connected, because he's actually a part of, I would say, my awakening journey. Because as I was going through my process, which at the time I wouldn't have called it an awakening because I didn't really even know what that was, I found Willow, like most things in 2020 and 2021, on social media because we were not out and about in the world. And I came across his videos. He was recording videos on all kinds of topics. And it was either on fairies or dragons. And you were recording this video from it was either your chair, or I remember seeing the plants in the background in some bins in your house. And I figured, like everyone, you were home too. And you were answering all these questions. And I hadn't really, to be honest, from a social perspective, really jumped on any lives or seen as much, I think, as I did during that time where people were just sharing their knowledge. And so I had come across this video and I started watching it and I was like, oh my gosh, I've never heard anyone talk about these things. And you did it in such an inviting way, in an easy to understand way, but also I felt really safe and welcomed as like you were asking, please share comments or ask questions. And it felt like a really safe place to do so. So I feel like you created that container right off the bat, and I hadn't experienced that before. So from there, I bought a couple of your books. And I remember actually I read one of your books while I had COVID. And then I was voraciously consuming so much of your content because you put so much out there. And then fast forward 2 years later, we actually get to meet in real life. Willow was coming up the East Coast doing some work, and we got a group together and got to do an event, and then getting to experience your energy in person was just next level. And even again, being around you and getting, to have some time with you one-on-one, and just again, feeling really welcomed and it being easy, but also a little intimidating knowing all this information that, it kind of felt like, ooh, I'm a little starstruck. I feel like I should ask some really profound questions, but I had nothing other than just, I wanted to hear you share whatever was coming through. So anyway, I wanted to share that because I just love all the content that you put out. You still continue posting and sharing content that's coming through for you that you feel called to share with the collective. So I'm just so grateful for all the contributions I feel made to my journey and continue to make to my journey. And so I feel really blessed to have you here. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. You saying that makes me realize that you were one of the first followers then, the way you described the video, because that was back when I was in the apartment, in the office, and not using the recliner with the cats all over it.
Yeah.
Most people today are like, I found you and you were in this recliner with cats all over it and talking about these things. So you're like one of the original OG followers.
Yeah. I do remember the recliner too.
So yeah, I mean, really what I do is I help people spiritually with their awakening, just kind of like you said. My guides told me one day to get online and start sharing, and I told them no. First, they told me to start writing the books. The books that you read would have never happened unless I did my own healing and went on my own journey. And I had always had this idea of writing this natural spirituality book. Because my whole life, since I was a kid, I spent time in the woods. I spent time just in nature and could always feel other beings around, could always hear spirit guides, those types of things, and had experiences. And I just had this thought, I'm like, I'm going to write a natural spirituality book one day. It'll be like a Celtic fairy spiritual experience type of thing. I tried to write that book, I don't know how many times over the years. It never, like, I even had a copy that was almost finished and I threw it out. I like took rid of it. And what it was is I hadn't gone through enough of my own healing, enough of my own awareness to be able to write it. I'd always get to like the end or the middle and be like, something's missing. What am I missing? Like, there's a big piece of this that I can't put into words. And all I could hear is, you need more experience. And so I just started getting more experience. In 2018, I had been in counseling for depression for 5 or 6 years by that time. And in 2018, I ended up writing because my counselor, when I first went to her, she had said that one of the first questions was, if you could change anything with your life, what would you change? And I said my career, because I was a web developer, and it's a very 3D logical. It can be creative, but I wasn't happy sitting at a computer, and I knew that. And so she goes, okay, without thinking, what would you do? And I said, write. And I was like, where did that come from? Like, why would I say that? It took me 5 or 6 years for her to finally get me to sit down, start writing ideas. That was 2017. All I did was write ideas. 2018, I wrote fantasy books, very dark urban fantasy style books that were more, they're paranormal, but kind of, I don't consider them horror. Some people are like, they're a little more on the horror side, but I was working through a lot of like my emotions and things. And what I didn't realize is, as I was healing, I was connecting more and more to my experiences, to opening my heart space, opening my channel, those types of things. And they had always been pretty open, but it was like another layer, I guess, of the world being revealed. And my guides came as I was writing the books, and they were like, okay, you're going to go on this path of writing fantasy books for a little while. I thought it was always going to be that. I didn't expect me to be here on a podcast talking about this stuff. And towards the middle of 2018, I think, they started saying, okay, it's time to write those books. I had 3 book ideas. Was the fairy book, the intuitives workbook, and my extraterrestrial book. And all of them were about experiences I was having. But you need to start preparing yourself for the idea of people seeing you and knowing you do this. And I told them right off the bat, I was like, absolutely not. I'm not doing this work.
How it always starts out.
Yeah. I've been, I don't know, maybe bullied is the word. I don't, because it's not really bullying. It's outcast, I guess, is probably a better word. I'm 40 this year, and I had done this work with telling people what I was doing since high school. And every time you tell somebody, it's okay for a little while, and then it like backfires and they get upset and you get ousted from the group, or you're the crazy one and that type of thing.
Meaning, do you say that you're connecting to guides or spirits or those kinds of things when you say you were sharing?
I would be connecting to spirit. I guess if I back up, like when I was 13, I had an awakening. I had experienced stuff before then, but I just thought it was like random things and, you know, I might be crazy. I was in an environment with my family that was not the healthiest. My dad was an alcoholic, and I always thought if I told somebody what I was experiencing, I was going to end up on pills in a mental ward.
Yeah.
And I always had this intuitive knowing, this voice that would come in and tell me things. I didn't realize that was spirit guides. Come to find out, it actually wasn't spirit guides. It was me doing spiritual work in the future, which is a topic even of itself, but type of thing.
Let's table that for another day.
Yeah. But message back. So I was hearing those voices, and then went through an awakening, saw a tiger. When I was 13 years old, I was riding my bike. I saw a tiger in the woods, perfectly like walked out of the woods, looked at me, wasn't threatening, but was invisible. Like you could see through it, and then kind of faded. And I just took off like bat out of hell type of thing. Get out of here. There's a tiger in the middle of Ohio. This isn't normal. And that tiger started stalking me through town and at school and stuff. And a friend noticed we would walk from middle school to the high school for an advanced Spanish course. And when we were walking, she'd noticed me acting weird. And she's like, what's going on? And then told me about Native American spirituality, indigenous spirituality, where they speak on spirit animals, totem animals, these animals you have that are like, some people would call them guardian angels or spirit guides or different things. Mm-hmm. And it all clicked in place. Like it was like that little puzzle piece just came down into my energy, clicked in place, and it all made sense. And I went, oh, this is real. This is real, what I've been experiencing. Because at that time I had seen, I think at that time anyway, 13, yeah, I had seen a Sasquatch footprint. I had seen them in the woods. I had experienced other things with fairies and other beings. And it just like, all of that made sense. So then going through high school, I was still very guarded, but I was able to occasionally share tidbits with people. I had a friend who would talk about aliens and stuff, and occasionally I'd share some stuff, or other people. And then college, but I'd have these experiences where I would share things and then people would be interested, and then all of a sudden it was like, this is too far. Like you're going too
much. It was too much. Yeah.
We can believe that maybe you're connected in hearing a voice, but when you start saying that fairies are real, Sasquatch is real, angels are real, gods and goddesses, all this stuff, and you're seeing them, like it's this thing that a lot of people can believe in the magic of it until you say you experience it. Very interesting phenomenon that a lot of people out there, when it comes to the myths and legends, I always go back to Celtic, Irish. Yeah. Or with
they're born from some truth, but we don't think of it that way, of a fairy tale.
They're like, oh yeah, it's all real. But then you start saying, well, I have a gnome that lives with me and walks around with me, and other people have seen and experienced it. And they go, well, that's not real. It's something else. It's like, no, the old stories, there is some twisting of the storytelling, especially when we talk about fear and fear-based stuff. Fear, I always say from my experience writing books and learning about how to write books, fear is what sells a book. So the stories have all bent towards the fearful side because that's the tale that people want to hear, that gets them excited, that gets them into a space of retelling it. So the old mythologies are real and based on truth, but they're not the symbolic nature that people think they are. Some of them might be metaphor and all that. But most of them, if they're talking about seeing gnomes, they were seeing gnomes. They were seeing elves or these other beings in the wilderness, on the land. And so I spent a lot of time in nature, started trying to talk to people, and over the years it had been shut down so many times. And had that fear too of, if I tell people, one, my family still didn't, even after all that time, didn't really know what I was doing. You know, like if I tell people, my family's going to try to put me on medication or something. Mm-hmm. In 2018, I had been freelancing for 9 years by myself. I had built a business around web development. And I was like, if I release this, a lot of the people I work with were conservative Christian, God-fearing people, I guess is the word. And I was like, I come out with this, I'm going to lose my business. I can't do this. This isn't a safe thing. And they were like, no, you can do it. And my guides came to me and different beings that I was working with. And we started working through 2018, 2020. We started working and preparing myself to write these books and go on this journey. And I really thought I was going to be an urban fantasy author. Things were picking up. I was selling. I was starting to make money at conventions. 2020 hit and conventions closed down. That February, everything shut down, everything canceled. And they had been asking me since my 20s, you need to sit down, you need to meditate. And I had an experience in my 20s where I meditated and I was working with my guides, and they're like, we want to advance you on what you're doing. But I was hearing thousands of voices to the point where it was driving me crazy when I would meditate, because there were so many beings around, so many energies trying to talk. And then not just that, but just like the random energy of people that was in the area, in the city, like picking up their thoughts and stuff. And so I said, I'm not meditating for like 10 years, even though they would keep coming to me. You need to sit down, you need to meditate, you need to do this thing. And I go, I know what's going to happen. I don't want to go crazy. But even in that space, I had already been experiencing fairies and different things. It was about like opening myself up more to healing and experiencing even more beings that were out there that people think are fictions, but are actually very real. And so 2020, I was like, well, I don't have anything to do. What's the worst that can happen? They got energy of kind of like, well, okay, you guys have been asking forever. There's literally nothing else for me to do. What's the worst that can happen? So I spent February, May just meditating 3, 4 times a day, experiencing all this stuff. The ET book. So I have 6 or 7 books, I think, that are free on my website. The ebook versions are free on my website. One of them goes through fairies. There's 2 workbooks. There's a journey book. There's one on death. There's one on ETs, all kinds of stuff. And I spent the ET book covers the journey of most of 2020 up till November. That's all it is, really, is that journey, those experiences. And the fairies coming to me and going out. Some people consider Sasquatch a fairy, which, if for those who don't know what Sasquatch is, he's like Bigfoot, the big humanoid being covered in hair that people see in the wilderness from time to time. They had called me out to a mountain and they kept calling me and calling me. And I had actually been programming a website for somebody who does this work in a retreat capacity. Mm-hmm. Since I started web development. It was like I started web development. I met her 6 months later. And my guides were always like, talk to her about this stuff. But I never did. I never felt comfortable doing it. And then I had a situation where I had a lot of fear come up from remembering things as a kid that I had experienced with other beings. And I went to her and she asked me several questions. She was like, are you still here? Are you healthy? Were you hurt? Is there any reason to be afraid or anything? And all the fear disappeared instantly. Because I was like, you're right, I'm still here. Why am I afraid of this thing that happened in all of this? So I was in that session and she goes, you are being called out to the mountains. You can see the cord. She's like, there's a very clear energetic cord to those mountains you're talking about. You need to go sit on the mountain and talk to them. And this was a very challenging experience because I went on to the mountains and my guides were telling me, like, go camping, don't use fire, don't take weapons, nothing. And it took me several times going, but what happened is I built trust. I went out to the mountains, I built trust with the fairies, the beings that were coming. And I started simply, like the first time, I think I didn't have a fire for a few hours in the middle of the night. And I sat there by a fire, nothing there. And Sasquatches were coming up around and fairies and different things. And so I kept going out to the mountains and kept building that relationship with them and doing what I call cold camping, which is no fire, and then learning how to go out with no, what we would call human protection of any kind and just trusting spirit. Now, when I say this, don't just go do this. Anybody listening to this is, I did this because I trusted my spiritual team 100,000%. And there are risks involved type of thing to just going into the wilderness by yourself. Luckily I was on the East Coast, so I didn't have to deal with things like bears and wolves and dangerous critters and stuff. But I did that. And then I went through COVID, realizing I was in a relationship that I didn't want to be in, which I had kind of known for years, but had gotten into that space of acceptance. Like, I'm in this relationship. It's just what is going to be, one of those spaces of being like, this is what I deserve type of energy. And they kept telling me, this is a very key thing for people that are awakening. They kept telling me every time I would meditate, they're like, okay, you're doing the work, you're doing great, but you have to be honest. If you want to continue and open yourself even more to all kinds of other things. So at that time, I had been having experiences with fairies, which we would call gnomes, elves, goblins, trolls, those types of things. Dragons are very real. I have tons of experience with dragons, and I probably should just write a book about dragons. There's a couple around here actually right now. And just these different beings we would call magical, like unicorns, for example. Beings that when we're kids, we fully believe in them. We're like, they're real. And it's because we come into the world without the programming, without parents or TV or schools or governments, all that telling us this isn't real. We come in and we're like, oh, you can see grandma, but grandma's been dead for 10 years and you never met her. and you describe her, and there are kids that I know and other people who have experienced that can describe their dead relatives without ever having seen a picture because they're standing there, or other beings that are around. And they kept saying to me, be honest, make sure you're being honest. And I'm a very truthful person. That's what people would say. Like, don't ask him a question. He'll tell you the truth. And it's very observational truth without judgment, but it will trigger people because it gets felt as judgment, even though it's not. And I was like, okay, well, what am I not being truthful of? And I realized it wasn't with myself. A lot of us are truthful, but we're not truthful about our experience and how we want to experience something. And so I learned that in those moments, I was like, okay, so I have to do the things that are going to be the most challenging. I'm going to have to leave the relationship at some point. I need to do the healing work from past trauma. I need to do all this stuff that people don't necessarily want to face, but that's the stuff, the healing you do, the embracement of your journey and healing and loving yourself and going after what you desire, following your authenticity, being you and not being clouded is the word by another individual or an organization or an ideology or whatever it is. But being you fully in expression is what you're supposed to be from an aspect of source, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. And when you do that, that's when you open up to all this stuff even more. I always go back to all my clients. I have 2 clients I'm working with right now who at the same time went through dark nights of the soul. A dark night of the soul is a period of time where you're like recognizing a lot of trauma and different things and having to deal with a lot of pain and healing types of energies. And they were experiencing stuff. They're going through this period of healing, and then they're re-experiencing even more now because they're going through that healing and peeling those layers back and becoming their fullest expression of who they're supposed to be, whether that's experiencing faeries the way I do or going on a different journey. I always say not every reality is what everybody is supposed to be on. It depends on what your soul chooses, but the healing is the core of the work. And a lot of people aren't honest with the healing work.
Well, it's hard. I mean, that's the work. You call it work, shadow work, whatever you want to give it in terms of a title. But I know as soon as I hear someone mention, you know, I've got to do a lot of healing work, or this is the time in like our moon cycle where we should be unearthing things and releasing them and doing the shadow work. You know, that's the hard stuff. I mean, I even cringe and I think, oh gosh, what else is going to come up? You know, that's the stuff. That's why it's called work.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I love that you found some of that healing through the writing, because it did have an arc of moving from all that fantasy where you said it was a bit dark to then sharing in a different way.
Yeah.
That was part of, I would imagine, your journey of healing, where maybe you started to kind of release that and then could move into this lighter space.
Yeah, it's funny because I still want to write the fantasy. And I always feel that people who are very awake are very in touch with the light and dark sides of them. And I don't mean like good and bad. I mean light and dark, balance, life and death, and types of energies. And so I have more fantasy books I'm working on, but the spirit stuff is taken over right now because of the awakening that we're in. And the fantasy helped me heal. I went to a counselor. I always feel into people when I'm working with them because I'm not a counselor. I'm not a medical professional or anything. I always tell people, their guides will tell me, like, this person needs to go see a human person who is certified, and not in a judgmental way, but in a healing way, that a lot of us do this work. We've been there. We've been through that space. The only reason a lot of us aren't anymore is because we know how to do it on our own. We've learned how to peel the layers back, and it doesn't stop.
I feel like that's a really important point, and I like that you still share that, because I think a lot of times when we go on these journeys, we do think, oh, I figured this out. I'm just going to embrace this other part of me and I'm healed. It's naturally going to heal. And, you know, Natalie and I have had lots of conversations ourselves of different journeys we've gone on with professionals. You know, I had an amazing therapist through the pandemic who just helped me so much and in so many ways, and helped me unearth a lot of stuff. I would say doing shadow work, she kind of started to unearth things for me. And then I was able to take them and use, I think, all of the spirituality, it was like fast tracking it, I guess you would say. She would help like take the shovel, dig it up, and then I could use other things outside of just things maybe we've been taught where a lot of people are on medications, or, well, you have to do this homework and then we'll come back and talk again in a week. And it feels like it moves so slow, like, oh my gosh, okay, I can do this homework, but like, I just want this to be done. And so I kind of sign myself up for like the Autobahn of healing of like, okay, I'm going to start moving through this stuff pretty quick and able to use some things I was learning from a spiritual perspective in tandem with that therapist to really heal so much. So I appreciate what you said, because I think a lot of times when we get in these spiritual spaces, we think, oh, I'm just going to do a meditation and I'll be healed. I'm going to bring in some light and it's just going to burn off anything that's residual in me and I'm going to shift to this new place. And unfortunately, that stuff is still there. And so yeah, I love that you shared that. So thank you.
Yeah. I just want to add too, Willie, I really resonated with what you said about that, because I was in the place where I was doing all the healing on my own and constantly philosophizing from these spiritual depths about what was happening to me. But actually, I got to a point where it was very important for me to go and see a professional whose job it is. I pay them to listen to me and to help me solve problems and unpack things. And I was off the spiritual deep end, but actually some really grounded practical advice was quite helpful. But it took me, to the age of 41 or 42, where I was like, oh, no, I think I've done enough of this on my own and I actually need someone to help me with this now. So we're all on different journeys with that. Some people are going to seek that help at a really young age. Some people have really like bad experiences with seeking that help out, or like you referred to, when I was a kid, I was terrified of being told I was schizophrenic and put on medication and just not being understood, because I knew there was nothing wrong. So we have so many different angles we can come at this from, but I love that it's always about the guidance for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's the guidance, and thank you for sharing those stories too, because it helps validate what I'm doing as well. I mean, just today I had somebody come to me, and I've had people come to me and go, how do I do what you do? They want to open their third eye to see things. They want to hear the voices or see beings, all this stuff. And I go, it's important to understand, I didn't do this overnight. There are quick paths to doing what I do, to seeing the beings and communicating. There are very quick paths. They can be very traumatic paths. They can be very ungrounded paths. And that's why you have people that get sent to psychiatric wards or get put on medication and isolated and all this stuff, or have psychotic breaks. They have psychotic breaks and think they are Jesus when really they're not Jesus, but they're channeling an energy of Christ consciousness or his energy and seeing him, but they're not him specifically. And people go on these journeys and they're like, we want to do that. And it's funny because today I had the same thing where I told somebody, I was like, you're not supposed to be doing this right now. You're supposed to be talking to somebody. You're supposed to be healing. You're supposed to be going through that healing journey before you even start touching this stuff, that you're jumping too far ahead. You're that type of energy. And Heather and I had talked about sovereignty, and sovereignty is this idea of when you start meeting fairies and all these other beings, people have a lot of fear of like, what are they going to do to them? Well, first of all, I would say they've been here so much longer than humanity and they haven't done anything to us yet. Most of the time, you're going to be perfectly safe. When you start experiencing things, you're seeing what already existed around you. It's not that they didn't exist. They've always been there. I always say people would be surprised or are surprised when they wake up and just notice how many beings live in their home, and they never knew it. They never knew the little fairies running around, the little brownies that are like little people. That I think there was a book called The Borrowers at one time.
Yes. Yeah, they had like the thimbles and lived in the wall. But I remember you had videos, and that was something that interests me, where you talked about what was coming through your house and what walked through your house and what would be standing next to your bed, and seeing that and having to get used to trusting that, where it wasn't this startling thing. And I thought, oh my gosh, that sounds terrifying.
Yeah. And on a side note, if anybody does want to see the videos, they are almost all on YouTube, which is searchable. And so these beings come up and people are afraid of them, and they automatically go to that programming of they're going to do something to me. Well, part of how you become sovereign is you embrace your authenticity, you embrace your truth, your honesty, you make decisions out of love, and you heal. That's the biggest thing. That's the thing that the term people will run into is spiritual bypassing. I've seen tons of people out there, whether they're healers, channelers, guides, shamans, whatever you want to call them, they go through this stuff and then they just start skipping the healing. And like you said, sometimes people do it and then they just kind of stop doing it and go, oh, I don't have to do that anymore. It's like you have to continue peeling layers back, because what people don't realize is it's not just trauma from your experience this life. Most people experience continued trauma in some way, things that upset them, that make them angry, trigger them, that type of thing, where they have to dig into, okay, why did that come up? You know, and you might not know. I've had things come up when I'm doing inner child healing work. Memories come up that I didn't remember from my dad and the way he treated me. And I'm like, oh God, now I have to heal this thing that I released.
Yeah.
But then you have your past life trauma. So you're a soul that comes into a human body and has lived past lives. And the trauma you experienced in past lives carry over. So some people might be having trouble with finances or love or these different things. And they're like, I don't understand what's going on in this life. Everything's perfect, but they can't figure this one thing out. And it goes back to you experienced something in a past life and you need to heal it and clear that energy. And then you have ancestral lineage, the ancestors of your physical lineage, that if your ancestors were afraid of money, or the other one is a lot of them like see it as control and as not something to be feared, but something that's bad, something that's negative to have in your life because it tempts you too much type of energy. You'll have to do ancestral healing around finances in order to open your abundance up. But people don't realize that in the journey that a lot of the healing isn't just your own healing. It's your own healing this life, past lives, and ancestral lives. And then when you heal that and you get into a higher space of what we call love vibration, your heart space, living in love, you start repelling anything that is essentially not good for you and become more sovereign, more strong, more individual in your operation so that things can't affect your free will. It all comes down to free will. And so when beings show up, you don't have to be afraid of them. Like when stuff shows up, I'm to a point where I don't experience my own fear. I experience collective fear. A lot of times stuff will show up, and that's something else entirely that we could go into in another episode. But the idea that the human race has been so afraid of something that you can feel the energy of fear, and then you are processing it for them in humans. But again, another topic. But this idea that they show up and you can, you know, you see a little person running around your house, you're not afraid of it. You sit there and you go, oh, okay, who are you? What are you? Why are you here? What's your intention? You know, start asking them questions. That's how you embrace your sovereignty, is through the healing, because the healing brings you to a heart space of love experience, which allows you to respond without fear. Normally people react with fear. They just react based on their feeling. But when you respond, you're very much like thinking and able to choose what you're doing. You're not just fight or flight type of panic mode. And when you're in that space, that's when you can start making decisions of, is this safe? Is it not safe? You know, making choices. A lot of people, when it comes to different encounters, that are like, I didn't have a choice. But then if you actually roll back the encounter, they just didn't ask the right questions or understand what was going on. And so it's important that it all comes back to that healing, because the healing is what brings you out of fear. When you heal, you release fear. And the more you heal, the more fear you release. And the less fear you have in you, the less likely a dragon's going to appear and you're going to take off running because you just have a fear response. It like strengthens you to be in that moment, and then also to allow yourself to go, okay, when you do feel fear, this is something that I often do. I had a Sasquatch sitting by my car one day, had pulled me out of the car, sat me beside him, and I went into a panic attack. The Sasquatch is sitting by the car and pulls me out and drops me down. And I've been working with them for years at this point. And I had a panic attack. In the panic attack, I'm sitting there, I'm going, I don't know why I'm afraid. I'm not afraid of you. I don't understand. Why am I feeling this? What is going on? And they were talking about how I was purging the last layers of fear. Like they were physically there. I was experiencing them. I could see him. And like, I couldn't even bring myself to look at him. I was so afraid. In purging that fear. But in those moments, it also allows me to go like, this fear isn't warranted. Why am I afraid? And I was expressing that to him, going, I'm not afraid of you. I don't understand this. What is going on? And I got to a point where the panic attack was so bad, I was having trouble breathing. And then they kind of did that telepathic kind of knock you out type of thing. When I say that, it's not something to be feared. A lot of people experience, you know, the strength of telepathy some of these beings have. And they're usually like having us go to sleep so we don't hurt ourselves. The panic attack was so bad, I was afraid that my body was going to like, something was going to happen. And then I ended up back in my car. They had put me back in my car. But it was one of these things where working through the fear is what allows us later to go through and be able to experience all of this magical stuff that people want to experience. If you want to work with the idea of your third eye being able to see things, or clairaudience being able to hear things, or astral travel where you come out of your body and you go to different places, or just visions in your mind, that type of thing. A lot of people aren't prepared because they haven't done the healing. I have this course called Realms of Awakening where we do this one-on-one kind of thing where I go through my spirit art and help people experience things. But it's a closed course. And the whole point is I've had people come to me and they're like, oh, I want to do this. I want to see stuff. And my guys are like, absolutely not. They need to heal. And the person doesn't understand that. A lot of times people take that as judgment. Like, why can't I do this too? It's not that you can't. You know, years ago, I was doing my healing work. I've been doing.
They're just not there yet.
Yeah, I've been experiencing since I was a kid. Then I went through deep, deep healing work. And the way that they're saying to explain it is these beings are of such a high degree of, they want me to use the words love vibration. They're of such a degree of love vibration that when you experience them, they know everything you've been through. They can feel it. They can see it in your energy field. They can pull it out of you essentially. And so it's like when you see them, it's not that you're afraid of them. It's that your trauma is trying to come out of you because their love is trying to force you into a state of love. And in order to do that, you have to clear all that. So a fairy, ET, whatever shows up and you're afraid of it, but really it's your trauma that you're afraid of. It's the healing you need to do. And when you do that healing, there's no fear of them because that's not trying to purge out of you. Yeah. But people, they misplace it. They like project it onto the being and go, oh my God, I'm afraid of them. But really it's your own trauma. It's collective programming from movies and all this other stuff.
Yeah. Talking about this healing, I think is so important right now because everywhere you look, especially in social, with all these spiritual teachers, everything's about manifestation. Mm-hmm. And so something that came to me while you were talking was manifest. You can manifest the life you want. If you just manifest this, it's like you'll have this job, you'll do these things. And I would say that's a lot of spiritual bypassing because you don't realize, if anything, it's setting up a lot of people to fail because they think, well, I just have to will it. I just have to do the vision board and stare at it and then do affirmations and do this thing or that thing. And it's not that easy because you do, for instance, I'm thinking about abundance and wealth of just saying like, I'm abundant. Now let the abundance flow in. Well, as you were saying, there could be some significant trauma from other lifetimes or even maybe your childhood or your parents that you're carrying that you don't realize that you've shut down or closed out or just never acknowledged or don't even know is there. And so I've been working at this for years and it doesn't work. And then I think people turn away from it because they feel like this is crap and all these people on the internet are calling this in and it's just to get me to buy something. And unfortunately, we know that there are people who take advantage of that as well. So I just think those are really important points around the healing work because I know even for myself, every time I think like, oh, good, I think I'm done with that. I fixed it. Of course, you get the slap in the face of like, nope, we're going to drop this in and really test you. And then it's like, okay, nope, not done with that because, yeah, I'm a big mess and realize there's still work for me to do around this. So That was one thing, because I feel like right now everyone's talking about how quickly we can manifest things. And I feel like there are people who feel like maybe there's something wrong with me, or I'm not doing this right, or this just isn't going to work for me. That'll never be me. I'll never be able to see these things. And you would say being able to see these beings would be a manifestation, getting to that point that you can manifest these experiences. And it took you a while, although it sounds like based on what you shared with your childhood, this was something that you came into at a really young age, that you had these experiences. You just had to put, as you described it, the puzzle pieces together for all to kind of click and make sense. So I'm curious your thoughts around the manifestation piece. And there's obviously this underlying work that has to be done first, though.
Yeah, it's one of these things that I haven't directly said it on social media, but I'll say it here for the first time. The term manifestation is a toxic term.
Oh, interesting.
And I released a few reels probably a week or two ago about manifesting in abundance and how it's all about healing. And if you're not working with a coach, like people who are paying these coaches, if they're not talking to you about healing, if they're just giving you techniques, it all comes back to the healing. It all comes back to what your energy can hold. And the example I give is people manifest the lottery all the time. They win the lottery, but then they're broke in a month because they can't hold energy. Their energy, literally their reality. This is something that, again, we could get into the weeds on, so I'll try to be easy with. But everybody lives in their different reality, and your reality is based on what your energy, your healing can hold and allow, what you truly know, feel, and believe. You can manifest that. Like the one that drives me nuts is the book The Secret, where they put the money on the ceiling and write $1 million on it, and you'll manifest $1 million. You can do that, but you won't be able to hold it in your reality unless you truly know, feel, and believe you can hold it in your reality. And you can't do that if you don't heal the aspects of you that are holding that back. And a lot of the spiritual community out there is not operating from a love space, and a love space is a healed space. A lot of these manifestors and other people are operating on what we call lower chakras, lower energy centers, which are like greed, ego, these different things. And they're telling people, yeah, you can manifest, but people are manifesting out of greed, ego, need, these different things. And so they're like, oh, I got it, but then it disappeared. There's a bunch of people I can actually think of that are really great at manifesting, but then the money goes. Like they get the money, their car breaks down, they get the money, something happened, out the door because they can't hold it. And that goes back to the spiritual bypassing, is that there's a lot of teachers out there that are not love-centered. And it's something I talk about a lot, because when it comes to the work that I do and the things that I teach, we need to be in a love-centered space. It's a form of protection. It's a form of health and safety to be in that space. And even with manifestation myself, I have guides that work with me on this. And one of the things they taught me was to understand that abundance, and this is a big thing when people are manifesting, they immediately go to money. They immediately go, well, money. What do you need in the moment? Is the big thing they taught me. Do you need time? Do you need health? Or is your physical body unhealthy? Do you need love? Do you need family, money? There's all these kinds of things. Do you need passion, creativity? You can have abundance in all kinds of things. What you're trying to manifest may not be actually what you need now. You may need to focus on other aspects of your life and be working towards a healthy partnership, for example. A lot of people are in unhealthy partnerships, but need to actually exit and go into healthy ones, or manifest health. But what they do is they go, well, my body is sick and I need organic food and I need a doctor and I need medicine and I need all this stuff. Instead of manifesting that, they focus on the money.
Right.
The universe is going to bring you the money. But if you want to manifest a healthier body, then start working towards manifesting that specific thing, because that's what's going to align you to. Maybe a stranger comes up and that's the specialist you need, but you never would have run into them before. Or something else comes along. So manifestation and abundance are these things that people can get tripped up in because a lot of the teachers aren't in a loving space, aren't doing their own healing. They're that spiritual bypassing kind of work, and they're very good and healed in the space of manifestation. Or the one that I see is very good at manipulating that they are in a space of manifestation, because here's one of the keys to watch. People who make a lot of money based on manifestation are selling people manifestation courses, manifestation techniques. They're not giving it for free. They're making their money by selling it to others. So
they're manifesting their abundance, their money. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not that they're great manifestors. They might not be able to manifest time, health, these other aspects.
Yeah.
That they're healed in the money space and they figured out a way to manifest money.
And everything else could be a mess around them.
Yeah. And that's the basic spirituality stuff that I try to talk about. So if you're hearing this and this resonates, follow my work, because I talk a lot about these basic things where it's like, hey, manifestation isn't what you think. Just talking to things isn't what you think. There's these other aspects of work, and you can do the bypassing. One of the things that they're bringing in is, the other day I saw a woman get on and talk to her followers. She's like, people need to stop bypassing. They want to talk to these beings. They want to experience these things. They want to experience this magic. And then they go so far, they turn around and they go right back to the programming, right back to religion, right back to this, because they got afraid. They get afraid because they have healing to do. If you're feeling fear, it's a sign you have healing to do. It doesn't matter if it's fear of fairies and beings experiences, or fear of lack of money, or fear that you're going to get sick, or fear that you're not going to find a partner. If there's fear in any area of your life, that's just an indicator you have healing to do. It's not easy to heal. It's not easy to face fear. But if you want to be a master manifester type of energy, for example, you have to face your fears. You have to go in and do the layering and dig through and reprogramming your understanding of what manifesting in abundance actually is. If you want to see and experience other beings in other worlds, you have to conquer fear. If you are in a space of health issue, most health issues are energetically related, and they're energetically related to trauma, which is fear-based, typically fear-based things. And so the energy sticks, and because you haven't dealt with the energy and the healing, it manifests physically. But if you go through and talk to your body and release and all of that, it helps you heal faster. These are these things that they don't talk about. There's like a small percentage, I should say, of the spiritual community that whatever topic it is, the small percentage talks about the actual healing, the actual like what you need to do. The other percentage is talking about, look at this cool experience, look at what I manifested, look at this, and like glorifying it in a way, but glorifying it in a way that makes, well, like what you said, makes it feel out of reach for people. And so they get this misunderstanding that they can do it overnight. One of the things I always talk about when people come is they're like, hey, I want to do what you do. I want to experience fairies. And like, it took me years to realize I was really experiencing them. And for me to see my first one, to know I was like talking to them in my mind because I had proof and they were telling me where to go in the woods and where to find things. But to actually see them took me years. And then to build relationships took me even more years. And it took a lot of time and effort and energy. It's not like take a magic pill and boom, you can see this stuff. There are magic pills, but the magic pills will throw you into what we call spiritual psychosis, where it's just this idea of like, there's so much going on that it breaks you, breaks you psychologically.
Yeah, I had an experience. A friend told me, I'm not sure what prompted this awakening, and she had like a break, like a mental breakdown, because she started hearing voices and all this information started pouring in. I'm not sure what she tapped into. And then she started telling everyone. Mm-hmm. And then her family, like you said, your biggest fear ended up putting her in a psych ward. And when she got out, my friend was sharing with me, she said, like, I know what I did wrong. I shouldn't have gone and started sharing all these things. And it just was too much. And she was like, yeah, I told you, like, we got to slow down and let's just process. And if you need someone to process with, I'm that person. Let's not process it out kind of in the world where people aren't going to understand and be able to help you and care for you and be in that kind of love centered space, what you were talking about, which is so critical if you're going through these things. There's no judgment, but you need to find that person that can be that. And luckily, my friend was able to kind of help her with that. And she's, hopefully going to be on a better path. But where can someone start if they're feeling like, okay, this is resonating and yeah, all these things haven't worked for me. I feel like I've done all these courses and something's not working. So obviously there's healing. Where would you recommend if someone is feeling this place, like, where should I start these things? Like, what are some practical things that someone can do if they really want to start healing and start connecting to whatever might be around them?
Yeah, so there are a couple things. Kind of back to your other question too, is if you're talking to someone, remember that secrets are safe. One of the important things to remember is not everybody is going to accept this stuff. And the more you keep it secret, the safer you are in terms of like feedback from friends and family. That's one of the things that I recommend for everybody is find people you can talk to who actually will, like you said, no judgment, no fear, will listen to you.
When you say secrets are safe, sometimes, this idea that we talk about a lot here too is like the masks of like, oh my gosh, I've got this. Now I have to put my mask back on. And I guess you shared about your journey of finally being able to kind of do that and be out here and share these things. And it took a lot of time. So I guess, would it be for people like, hold on, you'll get there. But right now you need to maybe wear this temporary mask to keep yourself safe as you kind of work through these things. So that way people don't feel like they're not being authentic of who they are. It's kind of walking the line of like authenticity and safety, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's walking the line of authenticity and safety. And it's one of these things where we talk about speaking your truth and authenticity and being authentic. But people who are in these spaces of like just starting out typically are not surrounded by people who are in their authenticity, who are safe to be around, who are supportive of growth and supportive of shifting change. And when people are in those spaces, they're typically, I don't want to leave that person. Even though like oftentimes if I'm with a client, I know for their highest good, they need to leave that person. They need to move on with their life and go a different direction. Most people aren't going to do that, especially when it comes to family ties. So they keep interacting and it's like, okay, well, you can tell people these things, but if you know how they're going to react, then you're just poking the bear type of thing. You're giving them fuel for the fire to give you more anxiety in this. And typically what I see personally anyway, I don't know if this is what everybody else sees, but when people are starting out, they embrace this, they go all in, and then they share it with their family. And the thing that holds them back isn't themselves. It's their family. It's their family projecting the fear, projecting you're crazy, projecting all of these things. And so they stop because they're like, well, the family must be right. I must be doing something wrong. And so that's why I say secrets are safe, because when it comes to truth and authenticity, you don't owe anybody an explanation for anything unless they ask a question. And that's where people get into the weed or get tripped up, because they go to an event and then they just start going, I saw a fairy the other day. There's no prompt. Nobody's saying, hey, did you see a fairy? What did you experience? There's no prompt. You don't have to give them information they don't ask for. That's still truth and that's still authenticity, especially if you know it's not safe to give them that information. So there's...
then you go into a defensive posture too.
Yeah.
Of defending it right away, of like, I saw this and it's like, I'm putting it out there, but you're putting it out there to probably be challenged, but also that now you're going to have to be defending that you actually did it, that you saw it.
Yeah. And it's this spiral. It's this whole thing of it spirals back and they get upset because they haven't healed their trauma around what the family members have done. So then you can't be in a safe space because you get triggered, they get triggered, and the cycle continues. So that the secrets are safe thing deals with that, where it's like, you don't owe anybody an explanation unless they ask you a question. If they ask you a question, answer the question. But if they don't ask you, you don't have to tell them. And it's still being truthful. It's still being authentic. There's a reason why a lot of us go through these cycles where people are like, they're not talking to us as much anymore. But if you look at it, what I realized through my relationships is people weren't asking me questions about anything. They were just expecting me to tell them things. And even to this day, some of those people I still have in my life don't ask me specific questions about anything. They're not truly interested. They're interested in the toxic dynamic of having fuel to fight back and forth type of thing. So the secrets are safe is this idea of protecting yourself so that you can do this work and not be put into doubt by other people because you're oversharing. And so that you can strengthen yourself. So as you do the work, the healing, you strengthen yourself. And then there comes a time, like you said, where you go to them, usually your family, and you say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I've been doing. Like, I'd never recommend coming out and saying everything. What I did with my mom is I had a box of my books. And when I was living at her house, and she came down and she saw my books, and I was like, yeah, these are the books I've been writing on fairies and ETs, and just kind of seeding. We call it seeding information. You give them just a little bit to go, what is that? And then if they ask a question, you go into it more. If they don't, they're not ready. If they see something where you say, hey, do you believe in extraterrestrials? And they just go, no, I don't. You can feel from their response, do they want to talk about it more? Then it's up to you if you share more. And so you just start seeding information and working with that more and more until they're ready, because it's all about when they're ready. And some of those people will never be ready. Some of them will. My mom's a good example where you give her a seed and 2 years later, she's curious about something, but not much more than that. And I did that with past lives one day. I was talking about past lives, and then like a year or two later, she's reading a book her friend gave her on past lives. But had it come from me, here's the other thing, is if it came from me, she would have rejected it. It came from her friend, so she accepted it. That's the other thing people don't understand, is sometimes it can't come from you. Sometimes you are the seed, you plant it, you give them the idea, and then their friend comes along and they'll accept it from their friend because the energy dynamic is more resonant to their experience.
Or a stranger on the internet.
Yeah.
Where they see a video and all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, I saw this amazing video. And you're like, wait, what? Like, I tried to talk to you about that and you couldn't receive it. But it is that dynamic of being in that, being able to receive it. And just like anything, we could say that in our everyday lives, it's that way, not even, outside of spirituality. It's just sometimes we share something with a loved one and they don't want to hear it. And then a coworker tells them the same thing. And all of a sudden it's like, wait, so someone that you're not that close to can say this to you and you can take it. But for some reason, when I do, which obviously probably all goes back to healing work and trauma and some kind of trigger. And it's just, it's kind of a cycle, but.
Yeah. And it's one of these things to learn to get into a space of, you'll tell people something or you'll seed something, and then they'll come back a year later or month or week, whatever, and they'll go, oh, look at what I learned and found out. And you'll remember having that conversation, but you also can't throw it in their face.
Right.
A lot of people want to bring it back up and be like, I told you so. I've been trying to tell you. That just creates more animosity, and that it's like, you just kind of let it go and go, oh, cool. What did you learn? And inside process, because like for me, when that's happened, it's like you process it inside, you don't project it onto them, you heal whatever that wound is not being listened to or heard type of thing, but don't project it onto the other person because it'll push them back, it'll shut them down.
I say, Willow, I think it's such a beautiful example of humility that comes with the healing, when you can actually, one, not get personally insulted by the fact that they won't listen to you, but they'll find that information elsewhere. Sometimes we're missing the fact that they've had this experience and they've sought you out to tell you that you're the safe space for someone else going through that process.
Yeah, absolutely. They come and you know, whether it's me, whether it's a counselor, whoever you go to that they seek out, it's one of these things that we have to let them seek out those people. And this comes down to energy. The parent dynamic is the perfect example. Why did I tell my parent this, but they won't accept what I'm saying, but they accepted it from a friend? It's energy. We live in a different reality. There's a polarity. There's a resistance there. And so when we say it, and I've said stuff to my mom, you can literally, like, it's almost like you see the energy go in one ear, out the other. Like you can feel it and see it almost. And
that's where that expression comes from.
Yeah. It's like she looks up almost like the words never happened. The conversation never happened, in one ear, out the other. And then has that thing where it goes to somebody else and has that interaction. But what you'll find out is that other person lives in a similar reality that she does, a heavier, denser reality, one where there's more, more healing to do. So they're at the same level. It's kind of like back to the schooling metaphor that we had been using, where if you're in, say, 8th grade and a senior from high school comes and tells you something, the 8th grader is probably not going to listen to the senior from high school. But if another 8th grader comes, or a 7th or a 9th grader, they're more likely to pay attention because they're about the same age range. They're about the same social group. The energy is resonant to them. So it's this idea of like, we have to step back as the people who are experiencing this stuff and just be like, okay, they got the information from somewhere. They figured it out somewhere. That doesn't mean it doesn't trigger our own healing and all that other stuff too. It all comes back to healing. That's been a big thing, I think, with the awakenings that are happening this year. My God, since the beginning of the year, we've been putting out reel after reel about, it's all about healing. If something triggers you, you need to heal it. If you're afraid of something, you need to heal it. If you don't heal it, you're going to have more and more trouble with the energy that we're experiencing, the world that we're experiencing, because it's trying to release fear. The idea is the more fear you have, the more you create a reality of fear. The more love you have, the more you create a reality of love. And people have so much fear these days that it's like, release the fear and everything becomes easier. You do the healing. I've experienced that firsthand with things like abundance. You do the healing work, the abundance comes easier. Comes when you need it. You don't have to be afraid that it's not there. Life becomes easier because you're not living in a fearful, paranoid, anxiety, worry-ridden state of existence. It's all back to that healing. It doesn't matter what you're doing.
Yeah. So back to the healing work. I had an instance not that long ago that I realized, gosh, I thought I had healed that, or even, I don't know why this bothers me so much. What would you say is someone's first step if you're like, gosh, I'm just so tired of feeling this. I'm tired of this reaction from myself. I know that I have work to do. I can't control anyone else outside of me. I'm in charge of me and doing what I need to do for myself. What can someone do practically, like today, if they say, I need to start kind of my own healing journey?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that back up. So the trouble is that the practical stuff is really individual to experience, but there are some things that everybody can do. When it comes to healing, if you can get into a meditative state, and it doesn't have to be an actual meditation. Basically, you need to be in a space where you've cleared your mind, whether it's walking, running, sitting on the floor, listening to music, that type of thing. Figure out how you can get into a meditative state and understand that meditation isn't just sitting with your eyes closed. Some people dance, some people cook, they do these different things. Set an intention. So if you're trying to heal something and you're aware of it, set an intention. And intention is very important with energy and all of this stuff, that if you're trying to heal trauma from a kid, or as talked about just a minute ago, healing like the energy of not being heard, of not being listened to, you set the intention, okay, spirit, God, universe, whatever words you resonate with, I want to heal this. Show me how to during this meditation during this space and time. They're saying journaling. Some people will need to journal, will need to just free write whatever comes to their mind. But the idea is whatever comes to your mind when you're meditating, set that intention and just let it come. Just clear your mind and see what comes up, what comes in, what thoughts come in, what words come in, feelings, colors, emotions, anything. And start working with that and work with it more. Work with it. If you're trying to heal, work with it every day if you can. 5 minutes a day. If you don't have a lot of time, 5 minutes a day. If you have more time, more time. But set time aside to do that type of work. The other thing is something that helps us heal just naturally and helps us bring that energy to the surface is nature. People need to spend time in natural frequency. Things come up and I'm like, why am I not experiencing this thing or that thing that other people are in the spiritual community? And I live in nature. I literally live out of my car in the desert right now, travel around. And they go, your baseline frequency is nature. Nature's baseline frequency, I think, is like 639 hertz, which is the heart frequency, love frequency. And the more time you can just spend in nature, and when I say that, I mean no headphones, no radio, like in nature, truly in nature, not distracting yourself, like
not listening to a podcast while you're out, just being present, listening to whatever's around you, the surroundings.
Yeah, I call it music of nature. There's a thing I'm doing right now. Listen to your favorite sound. And when I thought, I'm like, what's my favorite sound? It's just the sound of what's going on around me. You listen to that, you kind of just feel in that space. And that the more you do that, the more you'll baseline to that frequency, which is healthy, where the density of like cities and stuff drops you. And so people need that natural baseline. They need sunlight. They need to move. They need fresh air. They need the sounds of the birds and the plants. There's a study right before this, I was on Instagram and something came up about the plants not liking like rock, rap, reggae, heavy metal, all these things. They only like classical music and how these frequencies affect them negatively. So, I mean, your music can affect you, all this stuff. Basically get nature, fill your life with as much as you can. And that's going to help you. There's also, I have a free YouTube course, Unleash Your Spirit, that goes through like all kinds of stuff. I think it's like 40 hours of content.
Oh, wow. Okay. We'll make sure to share that. You're one of these people who put so much content out there for free. And just, I'm so grateful for that, because a lot of people don't have the resources to pay for things and buy a course, and to have access to these things, I think, is really important.
Thank you for saying what you said. Knowledge is supposed to be free. It's not supposed to be gatekept. It's supposed to be free. You can tell who's really in their heart space or who's working towards being in their heart space by which people are sharing freely. They may still, like me, I have my spirit art and different things that I do that help fund my ability to do free stuff. But knowledge should be free to the collective. One-on-one stuff is different. Collective stuff it should be free. I always try to point people to YouTube because like social media, it's just not searchable. But if you go to YouTube, most of the videos are there. And say you were to look at like Unleash Your Spirit. There's so much content in there. I have a couple people who have gone through it multiple times and said every time they go through it, they learn something different every time because there's so much there. The idea is you look at your life right now and you go, what can I do? What can I manage at this time? Like a lot of people doing this are, say, single mothers with multiple kids that are working jobs and only have 5 minutes a day. But you have people out there telling them, you need to meditate 20 minutes a day. You need to do this. You need to, take the 5 minutes a day, prioritize the 5 minutes a day and go, okay, in that 5 minutes a day, what can I do out of all these things that I feel will help me? And that's the key, is feel into what will help you. Don't logic it, feel into your heart, and the universe will tell you if you ask it. Always asking you shall receive, that whole phrase, asking you shall receive, is there for a reason. Ask out loud, Spirit, what should I do to advance myself, to heal myself, whatever it is. They'll give you signs, they'll give you awareness, they'll put a video on your Instagram that resonates and you're like, oh, that's it. That's what I need. And then do that thing. And remember, it's baby steps. It's this idea of when I was writing books, people will go, oh my God, you have so many books. How did you write them? And I go, well, I just started with the first sentence, started with the first word. You don't write a book overnight. You write a book by sitting down just 5 minutes a day. And this is actually a real thing. If you sit down 5 minutes a day and write just that 5 minutes, a little paragraph, by the end of the year, you'll have a full novel at the end of the year. If you do that with spirituality, it's the same thing. It's like building returns type of thing. You do 5 minutes a day and you keep doing that. And then when you can, you start expanding it. What you'll find is actually when you do that and you set aside 5 minutes, in a week, you're going to be doing 10 minutes, 20 minutes. You're going to start creating more time to do that thing. And you build on it. It's better to do that than to be somebody who goes all in and tries to do all this stuff and then gives up a week, a month later. You'll be farther ahead in a year than most people on the journey. There are so many people out there that like try to cram everything in. And I've seen it myself. People give up or get distraught because they're not achieving results or achieving things. It's not about the achievement. It's about your growth too. They're saying to remember, don't look at what other people are doing. Don't look at me. Look at what you've done.
And how it's affected your life, hopefully for the better, as you make these small little changes.
Yeah, small little changes. That's the perfect way to say it. It's you build with these small little changes. And then in 6 months, you look back and you go, wow, I did accomplish something. And it's one of these things too. They're saying that, remember, everybody has their own journey, their own path, their own timeline for experiencing things and healing. And to be very, very cognizant, conscious of the awareness that the people you see, even myself online on the internet, are not sharing the entire journey of their experience. They're sharing, most people are sharing 90-second clips of look at me, look at what I did. They're not sharing Dark Night of the Soul, the hardship, the healing, all that stuff.
The trauma and all the,
or they're bypassing it and just not doing it.
True.
So be very aware of that when it comes to publicized content. And just remember, look for those who are sharing knowledge freely. That's the new way. That's the new world. Like you just said, you do that, you share the knowledge freely, you put yourself out there, you magnetize the people who will support you to continue doing that, because that's how energy is supposed to work. It's supposed to be a flow. You give out the knowledge, in, abundance comes in, out it goes, flows back and forth type of thing, and not gatekept, because that's how we got ourselves in this situation in the first place. Knowledge was gatekept. And so now we're rediscovering it type of thing.
Thank you. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap up. We didn't know where our conversation would necessarily go, but we went to so many places. And I think for me, the biggest message I've received out of this is the healing, because no matter all the things that you want to have access to, that you want to experience, it all comes down to being able to do this healing first. And it might sound boring because, I can speak from my own experience. When we start realizing that all this magic around us is real, we just want a piece of it because it feels like a remembering, like, oh my gosh, I want to come home to this. But I think you so beautifully shared how we can't just rush right in right away, because we have to be able to receive it. And in order to have the experiences that we want to have, we need to be in a place of, whether it's a frequency or vibration, to be able to receive those things in a way where it's not going to be scary. It's not going to be fear-based. It's not going to turn us away maybe from something that really is meant for us, but just from a timing perspective might not be in this moment. And I think having faith and trusting that whatever's meant to come our way and be there for us will be there. It's there for us. We just need to maybe do a little bit of work before we can kind of reach out and grab it and really bring that into our everyday lives. So Yeah, I'm so grateful for you. Any parting words that you're getting to share with us?
Just that the beings around you love you. Remember that as you wake up, because people are going to spontaneously awaken to stuff around them. Some of them are going to go on that journey, that healing journey, and awaken through that space. Some of it's going to be like moments of clarity where, oh, hey, there's stuff, you see it, and then it's gone because it's trying to bring awareness that you need to go on this journey. But remember that they love you and there's nothing to be afraid of. If there was cause for fear, we wouldn't be here doing this type of work. You're never alone. You're always loved. And to embrace love in all of your choices. If it's fear, it needs healed. If it's love, it's there to stay and continue. So just remember that. And there's so much chatter back there. Strongly to not being afraid to be courageous and embrace your authenticity, no matter what type of pushback you're getting from family, friends. Be you, love yourself, and be you.
I love that, because so many of us are still wearing those masks or feel like we have to fit in a certain way, and know that, if you are feeling like an outsider or you're an outlier compared to your friends or your family, just know you're exactly who you're meant to be, and you are loved and you are welcome here. So we love you. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here and for sharing all the wisdom and having all the messages come through for us today. So grateful.
Thank you for having me. And then the last thing I would leave is just everything I do is Awaken with Willow. So website, awakenwithwillow.com, social media. You can find all my content in spirit art readings and those types of things.
Yes, thank you. And all that free content, we will definitely put all the links in show notes, and you'll find the information also on becomingspiritual.me, where we want to make sure that all of the beautiful souls that come on here are accessible, that you can find their content and reach out to them if their information resonates, find resources that you can utilize in your own journey. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Love you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your precious day to listen to our podcast. If this episode resonated with you, we would love for you to share it with someone you love. That would mean the world to us. Also, if you feel called, please follow our show so you will know when a new episode drops. If you want to go one step further, you can even rate this episode, as it allows our podcast to find its way to others. Lastly, we've done our best to share resources that you might find helpful in the show notes, whether that's a book recommendation or a website we referenced during the episode, a free resource, or more information on a guest who took their time to speak with us and share their knowledge. We would love for you to support their work too. You can find more information on our podcast website at becomingspiritual.me. We love you and can't wait for you to hear the next episode. Until then, know you have a place where you are welcome and you are loved. Welcome home.